5-year-old Ben was in the kitchen with his mother as she made tea. She asked him to go into the pantry and get her a can of tomato soup, but he didn't want to go in alone. "It's dark in there and I'm scared." She asked again, and he persisted. Finally, she said, "It's okay. Jesus will be in there with you." Ben walked hesitantly to the door and slowly opened it. He peeked inside, saw it was dark, and started to leave when all of a sudden an idea came to him, and he said, "Jesus, if you're in there, would you hand me that can of tomato soup?" For little Ben, fear prevented him from doing what his mother asked. He trusted Jesus, but not enough to go into that scary place with him. The story of Jesus walking on the water, as found in Matthew 14, is a story of fear and of faith, often recurrent themes in our lives. We initially see the disciples fearfully looking out from the security of their boat to the miracle which is occurring in front of their eyes as Jesus walks towards them on the water. As we put ourselves in the position of the disciples, we hear Jesus call out, "Take courage, it is I. Don't be afraid." As Peter sits in the boat with the other disciples, he accepts the possibility that this ghostly figure could actually be Jesus. And if it is Jesus, he wants to be like him and walk on water too. We do not hear the reactions of the other disciples. Were they stuck in stunned silence? Had fear glued them to their seats? Were they cowering behind one another? We do hear Peter's voice. "Lord, if it's you, tell me to come to you on the water." That request shows a guy who wants to overcome his fear. He wants to believe. And Jesus gives him that opportunity. "Come," he says. Imagine the scene. Peter slowly scrambling over the edge of the boat, lowering himself down and then realizing he is walking on water. What must the other disciples be thinking? But Peter made the move. Yeah, I'm sure there was fear there, but Peter's desire to overcome the fear was greater. And because of that, he walked on water. But then his sight moved away from Jesus and he caught sight of the wind. Peter's focus turned to the danger, not to God, the God who could overcome that danger. Peter did not doubt that Jesus was Lord, for he was the only one who stepped out and gave the seemingly impossible a go. Instead, Peter began to doubt himself. And that was when panic found itself at the forefront of Peter's mind. As we listen to God's voice, as we look at the world he's calling us to love, and the places he is calling us to go, we sometimes naturally panic. I know I sure do. But the truth is, that panic, that fear, need not overcome us. It can be a springboard. A springboard to a place where we have to totally rely on God. Astronaut Sally Ride says, "All adventures, especially into new territory, are scary." Physically walking on water has got to be an awesome adventure, but undoubtedly incredibly scary. Spiritually walking with God is an awesome adventure, but undoubtedly incredibly scary. But Jesus says, "Take courage. It is I. Don't be afraid." Tim Hansel, in his book Holy Sweat, tells this story. One day, while my son Zach and I were out in the country, climbing around in some cliffs, I heard a voice from above me yell, "Hey Dad, catch me!" I turned around to see Zach joyfully jumping off a rock straight at me. He had jumped and then yelled, "Hey Dad." I became an instant circus act, catching him. We both fell to the ground. For a moment after I caught him, I could hardly talk. When I found my voice again, I gasped in expiration. "Zach, can you give me one good reason why you did that?" He responded with remarkable calmness. "Sure, because you're my dad." His whole assurance was based in the fact that his father was trustworthy. He could live life to the full because I could be trusted. We have a Heavenly Father who is so much more trustworthy than any human father. But do we feel that we can live life to the full because He can be trusted? Peter climbed out of the boat and started walking on water because he trusted Jesus. He saw in Jesus something which exceeded normal expectations, and that trust was not misplaced. God did not let him drown, and as Peter trusted, he moved closer to Jesus. But the provision God demonstrated when Peter trusted beautifully continues even when Peter, in his human frailty, began to doubt. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, cried out, "Lord, save me!" Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. All was going so well for Peter, but panic caused doubt, and doubt caused danger. But Jesus' compassionate provision was not going to let that happen. Jesus caught Peter, regardless of his trust levels. He offered safety, for Peter had made that step of faith. In these days, Jesus isn't necessarily calling us to take ourselves to the seaside, push off from the shore in a dinghy, and then attempt some water walking. But He is calling us to get out of the perceived security of our boat. There is much talk about this return to normal. After months of challenge and trauma, we're longing to get back in the boat where we feel comfortable and secure. But we were not made for normal, nor were we made to remain in the boat. We were made to walk on water. Peter was not content with seeing Jesus walk on the water. He was desperate to overcome his anxiety to walk with Jesus too. There is no doubt that Jesus is walking in our world. The question is, do we want to join Him? You can stay in the boat and watch the miracle, or you can step out of the boat and be part of the miracle. For the church to have a future, we have to get out of the comfort of our boat. We cannot cling to the preferences and programs that make us feel safe, because the church is made for something far greater than just us. There is much joy as we begin to gather together for worship, and God does call us to pray, sing, and celebrate together. But our faith journey and God's mission is so much more than this. The church exists to reach our communities with the transforming love of God. We are here to bring hope to our world so that others too can walk on water. Peter took the initiative to get out of the boat. He didn't care what the rest of the disciples were doing. He just knew that for himself, He wanted to experience the fullness of God. Are you constantly looking back at others, fearful of their opinion? Or are you bold enough to take the initiative in your faith to experience the fullness of God? How are you going to take the initiative so that the church has a future? But more importantly, so that people who desperately need hope can discover Jesus. Fear holds us back. Comfort holds us back. Storms hold us back. Jesus calls us forward. Jesus calls us to walk in his footsteps, to step out of the boat and to follow him, draw close to him and to walk as he walks. Jesus calls us to be water walkers. Are you just sitting in the boat? Take this as your nudge to get out, to be a water walker with him. Don't be content with just enough faith to be safe. Step out and draw near to Jesus. Focus on him and not the circumstances or the storms. And if you get that sinking feeling, remember, he wants to reach out his hand and lift you up, and wants you to do the same when you see someone else faltering. We were made to be daring disciples, faithful followers, courageous Christians. We were made to be water walkers, whose lives encourage others to be water walkers too. If you want to walk on water, you've got to get out of the boat. God bless you.